Winnipeg used their speed to capitalize on the Panthers' mistakes, and that ended up with the Panthers chasing the game. And although they cut it to 1 with just a few minutes left, the comeback falls short, and the season series is split. We'll break this down and more on today's Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Wednesday, November 20th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from Hockey News. If you follow me on X at Monoman12, follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So the Florida Panthers went into Manitoba on this second game of this quick 2-game season series for them and the Winnipeg Jets. And after having their way on Saturday night for them, it kind of continued going into the beginning part of the game, but the Winnipeg Jets capitalizing on some Panthers mistakes. They got as much as a 3-goal lead in the second period. The Panthers were clawing back in this one, got it to a goal with a few minutes left, but 2 empty net goals for the Winnipeg Jets, and they iced the game with Mark Scheifele having a hat trick, which we have seen Mark Scheifele kill the Panthers multiple times in his career against the Florida Panthers. And the Panthers end up losing this one 6-3, and the season series is split for this with the Florida Panthers and the Winnipeg Jets. And here to break down this 6-3 win for the Winnipeg Jets over the Cats is Jacob Winans here on the show. Jacob, final score doesn't always tell the story, but as far as how close it was at the end, but man, Panthers were chasing this one with although the second line really truly set the tone, just it came down to long shifts, unable to break out. Speed was a factor, especially on that first goal, especially for the Winnipeg Jets, where it was a quick breakout for them. But really, this game got out of hand very early, and it was just the chasing game for the Cats.
Yeah, definitely. They came back at the end. They got close. Start to think maybe they could steal a point, but if they would have gotten a point or even an overtime or shootout win, they definitely wouldn't have deserved it. At the end of the day, the score got close for a couple minutes there, but 6-3 is a lot closer to what that score actually should have been.
Yeah.
Panthers did not really even deserve to be in that game in the end. Some careless mistakes, careless penalties from Winnipeg gave the Panthers a lifeline, but they really had no business being in that game. It started, the first period started pretty well, and then a couple stupid mistakes, and the wheels come off in the first period. Then after that, they're chasing the game, undisciplined again, and then the inability to kill penalties, the inability to get clears, getting pinned in your own zone. And then the Panthers just really lack speed, especially the bottom six. Third line had a really, really, really rough game tonight. Probably their worst of the season. And the fourth line, AJ Greer gets a goal with a lucky bounce. But other than that, the fourth line was, they struggled too, especially when it came to speed, which we kind of knew going into this game was going to be a problem for after Paul Maurice, for whatever reason, takes Mackie Samoskevich out of the game and puts in Jonah Gadjevich, who, Gadjevich has been a physical presence, does his job and does it well, but it's just a bad matchup for him. He's not a speed player. He's not a skilled player. He's more of a big body bruiser, grinder type. And Mackie played his best game as a pro in the last matchup against Winnipeg, actually gets the game-winning goal and comes out of the lineup tonight for, I guess, the sort of rotation that they're going with Gadjo and Mackie. So didn't like that decision, and it kind of bites them because the bottom six had a rough time keeping up with the Jets' pace.
Yeah, and then AJ Greer getting that goal kind of like settles things down a little bit and talks about his role of just about, creating a little bit of energy there. And that was through 40 minutes, that was their only shot on goal as a unit. And then it went goes into the net. Obviously, it was bounced off the skate of Adam Lowry in the back of the net. But you think about the the second line for the Panthers weaving into the zone 2-on-1s, but missing the net. Uh, and then once again the extended shifts, and then just their ability to get a handle on the puck. I mean, Jesper Boquist and Gustav Forsling were trying to get theirs right before the Jets scored their first one by Kyle Connor. And I mean, no penalties in the first, but then I mean, you think about the Panthers and getting their chance to kill a 5-on-3, which was an outstanding kill by Gustav Forsling and Sergei Bobrovsky. Gustav Forsling taking away a passing lane that Morrissey had, and then take a big block on Nikolai Ehlers, and then Bobrovsky getting two stops on Mark Scheifele, and I believe the other one was a follow on Velarde on that one, excuse me. But then you think about just untimely penalties. You think Etulu Sterainen taking a penalty that resulted in the goal that was 4-2. Although Dmitry Kulikov, there were times where I thought he was actually pretty great in this game. He had there was 2 times where in one shift where he keeps the puck into the zone, but then trips into Mestikov lifting the stick. I mean, you're going to lose your edge. A lot of people are arguing about possible dive on that one, but when your leg is lifted that high, you're going to lose your edge there, causing the Panthers to go on the PK there. But the Panthers thankfully were able to get it close, with Sam Reinhart scoring from his office at the time to make it 3-2. Point streak for Sam Reinhart at 11, Barkov at a point streak of 9. But once again, it was very fortunate that the Panthers had 2 opportunities at 6-on-4, scoring on the first one thanks to Matthew Tkachuk with a screen by Barkov. I mean, Barkov really truly woke up towards the end. I mean, he was 15 of 16 at the time of that goal by Matthew Tkachuk there for that. But honestly, again, like you said, 6-3, although there was 2 empty netters at the end, looked more accurate on how the gameplay actually was.
Yeah, definitely. It was just another game where it's the untimely mistakes, and it seems like they're going through a stretch right now where every mistake ends up in the back of the net. And we've seen Bob bail him out of some of these situations in the past. He's just not doing it this year. And I'm not too concerned about Bob. His game will pick up. He'll start to make those saves eventually. The track record shows you he will. Mm-hmm. But it's a little concerning because the bailout saves aren't coming. The defense is a little bit more porous than the past couple of years, which we knew was coming. They didn't really have the cap space to spend on D and really upgrade that unit. They lost some key players, so the defense was always going to look different. Was always going to be a little bit less of top end talent there this season. Mm-hmm. But they're definitely struggling on giving up some of these chances, and it's not the overall game that's bad on the blue line. The overall game has been mostly good. It's just this blue line, for whatever reason, just has a tendency to make really careless mistakes, and it's one, 2, or 3, just a small number of these catastrophic mistakes each game, but they're ending up in the back of the net. It's not that the blue line is not talented. It's not like that they're not playing well overall. It's just there's a lack of focus here and there, and it's 1 or 2 breakdowns each game that are just too much to overcome in a game like this against Winnipeg or the games against New Jersey. It's the good teams are going to kill you for that, and the Panthers are struggling right now in the past couple of weeks, just limiting those big errors and sticking to that team game that they've been successful with.
Yeah, and I got more on some of the blue liners, for one of the blue liners, at least for the Florida Panthers, on on at least on one of my 3 duds when it comes to this loss for the Cats here in the first of their 2 in this road trip against the Winnipeg Jets, as they also will be going to Chicago on Thursday night. But we're going to discuss that more on the other side of the break here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. And you can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get in on the action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Prize Picks is the only real money fantasy platform with injury insurance policy so that your lineup stays in play, even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup live. Sign up today, get a $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. You think that Connor McDavid will get more than 0.5 goals this week? You think that Sam Reinhart will continue his play and on the race for the Rocket Richard due to that unfortunate injury from Alex Ovechkin on Monday night? You could put that all on Prize Picks. So download the app, use code LOCKEDONNHL, and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Once again, download the app, use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you get your first $5 lineup. And you could do that all on Prize Picks. Run your game. Also, this episode is brought to you by Game Time. And Game Time is the most trusted ticket marketplace out there. The creation makes it easier to save more on sports, comedy, concert, theater, and more. Toggle this feature shows up your total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And the lowest price guarantee or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And I'd like to thank you guys once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Winans Wednesday edition of the show, where the Florida Panthers lose to the Winnipeg Jets by a final score of 6-3 from Canada Life Center in Manitoba, as now the season series is complete and ended up in a split, which you go back to this and you think, going into it with the Winnipeg Jets only losing 2 at the time, and you be happy with the split. It was an expected response, I would say, by the Winnipeg Jets there. They only have lost one game at home all year for them, but 3 duds of the game. I'm going to give an honorable mention for one. I'm going to put Eetu Luostarinen as one. I spoke about the untimely penalty, even though it didn't count as a power play goal for the Winnipeg Jets. That play ended up with the Panthers in their zone, which the Scripps Sports broadcast had the timer at the bottom right, 1:40 after an initial clear for the Panthers right before that goal. But number 3 is Sergei Bobrovsky. I would say the first 2 goals on 5 shots, even though we spoke about the Winnipeg Jets and their speed, bobble puck on the first one, but then the second one with that Mark Scheifele scored his very first one of the game. No screen there, and you thought that Sergei Bobrovsky could have had a little bit of time there and maybe could have made that save one he would want back there, and that truly put the Panthers behind the 8 ball real fast there. Number 2 is Aaron Ekblad. Tough time for the pair of Forsling and Ekblad to get off the ice there with their fair share of battles, maybe a little bit unaware of where Scheifele was when Gustav Forsling drew to Kyle Connor on the goal that made it 4-2, and then left Kyle Connor wide open right there for them. So maybe a little bit of not having his head on a swivel. And number 1, I would say, is Anton Lundell for the Panthers. That whole line, the third line, although the shots were 4-3 at 5-on-5, the Corsi 4, the shot attempts were 13-4 in favor of the opposition there, and just having a hard time breaking out of their own end. Which on both the goals, the first two goals, Dylan Sandberg, although he didn't get a point, he was quick with trying to get that puck off the ice, out of the zone in the first one and in the neutral zone to get it back, and for them to catch the Panthers in that change, for the Jets to get on the board. So Bob, Ekblad, Lundell, how about yours?
Yep, I've got a couple honorable mentions tonight, actually. So I'll start with those real quick. I've got Carter Verhaeghe, and he played a very, very good game, did everything right. He's only an honorable mention for me because he still, for whatever reason, cannot finish. I don't know what the issue is right now. He's a little bit snake bitten. He can't seem to finish. So I like the good signs I saw from him tonight. He's trending in the right direction. He's probably going to break through soon, but this is a game where you would have liked to see him finish. So he's going to get an honorable mention, as is Paul Maurice. I tend not to go with the coaching on these, but didn't love the decision to take out Mackey tonight. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Maybe you're expecting a physical game after how things ended last game, which I can understand. But it's a game where you knew you were going to need speed, and you take out arguably your fastest forward, who's scored 3 goals and an assist in his last 7 games, including 2 game winners. I don't understand that decision unless he has an injury or needed a break. So those are my honorable mentions. My third dud of the game is going to be Bob as well. Honestly, it's the Scheifele goal is the one that gets him on this list for me. That was the backbreaker. But there were you need him to bail you out at some point in a game like this. He's got to make a big save. Didn't come through with one. Gives up at least one soft goal. Anytime you give up 4 goals in less than 20 shots or right around that 20 shot mark, you're not going to win many games. And I think he was a little bit hesitant playing the puck, kind of fighting it a little bit on his rebounds. And realistically, if the Jets don't miss a couple of easy ones and don't hit the post a couple of times, he could have given up 6 or 7 tonight. So Bob's my third dud of the game. My second dud, I've got the entire third line. Like you said, there's not much else I can say that you didn't already cover. The third line was awful tonight. They'll bounce back. They're defensively responsible. They're talented, but the third line was just horrible in this game. And my first dud, it's going to be 2 guys actually, but it's going to be the power play defensemen of Belinskis and Ekblad. Ekblad plays on the second unit. I thought his issues were more special teams on the penalty kill side. So really it's special teams defensemen. Ekblad was awful on the penalty kill. Belinskis fumbles the game away on the power play. The D-men that are tasked with leading the special teams units didn't get the job done tonight. Ekblad is counted on to be the minute muncher on the PK. Belinskis is counted on to quarterback the power play. Neither one of them really did what they needed to do to get 2 points tonight on their respective special teams units.
Yeah, and with and then a series of unfortunate events where Uvis was reaching with the stick after the puck was in the Panthers zone, and then trips Mark Scheifele as well as part of the 5-on-3 for it. And then there was an early chance in the first few minutes of the game where he coughed the puck and then off the forecheck and then drop off to Pionk where it hit outside of the net for Uvis Belinskis. And then you mentioned Carter Verhaeghe. There was 1 2-on-1 where him and Tkachuk, and then I don't know how that one doesn't go in the net where you're catching them on a change for the Winnipeg Jets. They're just Connor Hellebuck is just once again he's just all world for his position. He is right now taking over Vasilevsky for number 1 goaltender and just the best out there for the entirety of the NHL for him. And then Barkov also hit quite a few posts even before they got that goal. Thankfully, the Panthers kept the puck in their own end to at least cut the deficit there. But man, it was post galore for the Panthers there on the evening. But let's go to the moment where we knew the game was lost, and then the goal to make it 3-0. I wanted to go with the second one at the end of the first, but I wanted to have a little hope there for the Panthers because it's more common that they come back from 2 than 3, and the last time we saw that was in March against the Dallas Stars. So the moment it was down 3, it was just like, okay. And little glimmer of hope for AJ Greer, even a little bit of hope when Matthew Tkachuk scored, but it was just like you said, it would have felt like an unearned point, but you would take it anyway if the Panthers found a way. But that was just 3 goals was just too much to overcome.
Yeah, I kind of went the other way. I wanted to say that it was the third goal where I knew the game was lost, but in actuality, I kind of lost all hope for them to pull this one out after the Scheifele goal, the second one of the game. I thought when the Panthers went down 2-0, Winnipeg was just able to play their game from there.
On the road.
Yeah, it's a tough environment. It's a tough building to play in when they're playing well. And yeah, Scheifele gets that goal and it's 2-0. I didn't even expect the Panthers to really amount that much of a fight coming back the way they did because Hellebuyck is so difficult to score on. If there's one thing I'm impressed with in this little split here, it's the way they were able to get to Hellebuyck. Putting 8 goals on him in 2 games, that's pretty impressive. So I'll take that definitely. But after going down 2-0 against that team, you don't really expect to come back. So that's the moment I knew the game was lost.
Yeah, and then maybe this is a little bit of recency bias, but just the last few years of just I mean, it's so crazy how the Panthers just certain Western Conference teams, you just know that when you go into their building, it's not going to be fun. I mean, the Panthers love playing in Colorado. They don't love playing in Winnipeg. They love playing in Anaheim, but they have a hard time playing in Chicago. So it's just strange when you just know that this team and just going into certain buildings that it's going to be a harder time for them. And maybe that's just looking back at just recent history and just knowing it's like, okay, 2, you have a hard time playing in this one. Maybe time to not necessarily pack it in. Credit to them. They didn't pack it in. And it's just like continuing to show that it's a team that would just once again never die. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3. We're going to discuss more of that and some news in regarding the Panthers viewership from Scripps Sports. We're going to discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and get ready to take on the NFL action with America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel. And because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get hunched in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets on your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And I'd like to thank you guys once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Wednesday, a Winans Wednesday edition of the show, where the Florida Panthers dropped to the Winnipeg Jets by a final score of 6-3 to once again split this season series between the two. And also a few shout outs for us here on the show. Best of luck to Alex Ovechkin, who's dealing with an injury, a week by week injury. After a collision with Jack McBain after scoring 2 goals and then going to the tunnel. He will not play for the Washington Capitals when they visit Sunrise on their one and only visit. And also best of luck to former Florida Panther Mike Riley, who's going through a heart procedure. And just the words of that are just scary in itself for that. So just saying that our thoughts are with those two and their recoveries. So Jacob Palmery spoke about, we weren't bad, we weren't great, we were just okay. And really, I guess when you look at just up and down the lineup, you talk about okay. I mean, you think about some players stepped up well, Some lines did not. We spoke about the second line. First line was really until the end. Fourth line, bottom six was just nothing. So okay is the best way to describe it. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I agree. I think they were not even just the certain lines being on, certain lines not being on. It was kind of a tale of two efforts. They started the game really well across all lines, all four lines, except maybe the third line early on. Played really well to start the game. You give up a couple goals, the wheels fall off. Then they go a long stretch through the second period, playing really, really horrible hockey. And then in the third period, they fight back and they play really good hockey. So it was a little bit of an up and down. So yeah, I think okay is a good way to describe it. The issue is a lot of teams, you can squeak out a point or you can get an OT win in a game like that, playing just okay with the talent you have on the Panthers roster. Winnipeg Jets are not a team you can expect to beat when you just play okay. And that's really how you end up in the situation you end up in that game where you have a little bit of hope at the end, but it wasn't deserved, and it definitely wasn't an earned situation that they found themselves in the third period. And yeah, it's a team that's going to punish you for just playing okay. That's the best team in the West this year, so you have to bring your A game against those guys, or else you're gonna end up with no points. And I think overall, past four games, Panthers have largely played just okay over the past four games. First game against New Jersey, I thought they played an all right game. Played pretty well and get buried on the scoreboard. Second game against New Jersey, played horrible. First game against Winnipeg, you played really well. This game, you play average to below average. It's a little bit of a up and down, but against good teams, you're not going to get points playing that way. So I think the 2 points out of the last 8 available is pretty accurate for what they've earned. And they'll have to find their game against a pretty bad Chicago team who. Better than last year, I'll say that. Definitely a little bit better than what we saw from them last season and in years prior. But so they can give you some trouble, as we've seen. You mentioned it. Panthers struggle in Chicago for some random reason, but that's a team that you have a chance at a get-right game. So we'll look forward to that one.
Yeah, I'm actually very looking forward. Just not necessarily the opponent, but the opportunity that the Panthers. It's not. For them, bouncing back is actually something we commonly see for this team. So thankfully, it's for them. They'll be able to go and hopefully go into a building and get there, which will preview that game with Jack Bushman of Locked On Blackhawks. Very looking forward to that one. But in some other news, in the world of the Florida Panthers, Scripps news, the Florida Panthers announced that Scripps Sports, the viewership is up by 170%. So 2 factors go into that. Stanley Cup championship, obviously, and the fact that it's more accessible to fans due to local TV. They have their own app. There have been growing pains. I have seen the post on X, Blue Sky, and Facebook, but now it seems as if people have figured out this new way of going about watching the games. And also with the news of the Diamond Sports, Bally Sports bankruptcy and everything, Panthers got out at the right time.
Definitely. We talked about this a lot when it was announced and sort of previewed how this was going to look. And it's nice to see some initial numbers coming in showing that this has been a largely successful experiment to get started with. And we kind of figured it would be. You talk about access all the time and giving this region greater access to watching this team. That was always going to be a win, and that's always going to be a really strong step in the right direction towards growing the sport down here. And it also helps that they're defending Stanley Cup champions. They gained a lot of new fans during their 2 Stanley Cup runs in the past 2 years, even going back the year prior in the President's Trophy winning season. That's when you really started to see attendance numbers increase. You started to see viewership numbers increase. The Panthers became a very, very entertaining team to watch, win or lose. Everybody wanted to see it. So, I think it's been trending in the right direction. And then the Scripps deal, the local access comes in at the perfect time when the Panthers are at the peak of their growth. So I think it's definitely validating. This is a growing hockey market, and the numbers show it.
Yeah, we finally get to see numbers to back up what we've been trying to say. And also, speaking of other numbers, we have more of a projection of what the salary cap is going to look like for next year. I don't want to dig too deep into players for the Panthers of UFAs for them, but we were thinking 92.5. But Elliot Friedman of 32 Thoughts spoke about possibly 95 due to the escrow being paid, and now it could also be possibly 110. And with the new CBA coming into the mix in a few years, and if they get it done early, we could for sure see 95. But really, for the Panthers, it was really about taking advantage of locking your best players while the cap was flat, and it's kind of like investing in the stock market. When the shares are low, you're buying and buying and buying, and then it's returns going up. And for the Panthers, it's really truly beneficial on their possibility, and it really makes the middle class of the NHL across all rosters, but really truly helps the Panthers middle class for them to possibly still keep this going for them. And once again, the 2030 mark from here until then is really truly going to help now that we have a possible number.
Yeah, no, it's huge. And any increase in the salary cap beyond what the initial projections are would be extremely welcome sight for this Panthers team as they're trying to keep this core together. You know, we've talked at length about guys who are UFAs and guys who need deals. If you're the Panthers, you want to get that Bennett deal done as soon as possible before we get an official number on the salary cap. That's something you want to prioritize, definitely.
Maybe trade deadline, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, we look at that as a really, really welcome sight because it gives the Panthers an opportunity to keep this core together. And it also puts rivals within the division, some of the younger up and coming teams, in a tough spot because they're going to have to pay guys who are blossoming into superstars and starting to really contribute, coming off of ELCs and things like that, or coming off of bridge deals. They're going to have to pay them market value. Like I personally, a good example would be like Carolina. I really don't envy their position with Marty Necas, for example, with his deal expiring after next season and what that could mean for their cap, what they're going to have to pay him. And there's a lot of teams that the Panthers are competing with that are in similar situations. So it pays off for Bill Zito getting these deals done early. And it would almost be unfair if you have a cap that's somewhere between 95 and 110 and you're paying number one defenseman Gus Forsling under $6 million. I mean, he can't ask for a better situation than that.
Yeah, and Marty, like you mentioned, Marty Necas has been incredible. Actually, his deal expires the year after, but still, he's gonna cash in for his next deal. And if you're the Anaheim Ducks, start paying guys to get to the cap floor, but also at the same time, you got it's too reliant on their young guys for what they're doing. So it's like, do you pay some of these guys or do you not? Because they're going to be up to the 50 contracts. Do you start trading for guys as well? But also for the Panthers, it puts them in a great position to possibly make a trade as well for some guy who's not making the increase just yet, and then they could see where it's at and for an extension after, especially because they're 1 year closer to that first round pick for them to trade. And we know those picks aren't going to be part of the Panthers contention window, as it's going to be hopefully outside of the lottery into the 20s. And we know the chances of guys in the 20s of playing 100 plus games in the NHL. It's not a high percentage for them. So it puts them in a great position. Also, not just free agents, but putting them in a position for bringing someone in, especially if you need to re-up the decor for them. So great news all around. I'm excited, and go listen to 32 Thoughts to listen to the whole details of the breakdown of just the increase on why it is that number. But that got me super excited. But Jacob, I want to thank you so much for joining me once again on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. A 6-3 loss for the Cats against the Jets, but an opportunity to bounce back on Thursday night in Chicago. Tell everybody where they can follow you online, my friend.
Yep, you can follow me on X at Jacob Winans 8, and I'm thinking if we have another loss on a Tuesday, we might have to switch up the schedule. I think I'm bad luck here. That's 2 in a row. We got to snap this streak, guys.
Well, there's no game next Tuesday. It's Monday, Wednesday, Friday next week. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday next week. So we might. So maybe a little bit of a shakeup. So maybe that could bring the Panthers luck. So, but anyways, thank you as always for joining, and see you next week.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast and be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacob Winans, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.